Hey guys, I'm Chris,
And Mike.
and welcome back to this week's No Limits, the Scot Harvath podcast. How you doing today, Mike?
Chris, we are back. We are freaking back. And Brad Thor is back with Act of War. I'm ready for this one.
I told you that when we recorded our last episode, for some reason, we did 3 episodes on Hidden Order.
And 3 publications of Hidden Order.
Didn't quite deserve that, but I said I went ahead. I read the first 5 chapters of Act of War, mainly because when I was reading the epilogue part 2, they had the first 2 chapters like right after it. So I was just, let me keep going. And I was digging it. And boy, are we back.
We're back.
This is his wheelhouse. I even texted you. I said, I'm enjoying this so much. I don't know if I'm enjoying it more because of where we came.
Yeah. I think it's just a good book. I think we would have enjoyed it.
It's a very good book.
Yeah.
And this is what Scott does best. I mean, this is what
exactly
Brad does best. Like,
it's his wheelhouse. He is right in his wheelhouse.
It reminds me of, what was the most recent one we read about China?
Well, Rising Tiger.
Rising Tiger.
China.
Right, India and China. Yeah.
It does have that feel a little bit.
A little bit.
It also has like a near dark black ice feel. It just feels a little bit more like the formulaic Brad Thor that we've gotten used to. Whereas instead of one of these swings and a miss. Exactly.
The last one felt more like a Pat the Assassin, Hannibal's, the Hannibals, the Jeffersons, all the ones.
A little out there. This one wasn't that out there.
No. Pretty standard, down the middle. Interesting idea. Definitely want to talk to you about the idea of like this, attack, sleeper cells, China, because he's really truly only like hit the Islamic terrorists so far. This is his first, besides Islamic terrorists and Russians, this is his first time going into the Chinese as an adversary. And this is something that he's going to come back to more and more and more as we read on. So yeah, I was super digging it, man.
Yeah, I agree. Another angle here is North Korea. The North Korea stuff for me absolutely hit. Probably one of my favorite storylines that I want to get into with you. And sometimes those dueling narratives or a whole nother plot can take us away from Scott or can let us, kind of have a break that we didn't want from Scott. Well, this one I felt like was a nice, and I won't even call it a side story because it's clearly related to what's going on and this Chinese plot. Maybe some elements of the Chinese plot are that far-flung, a little hard to get over. Yeah, this is not going to be a perfect buy-in score, but it does enough to be really high on the buy-in in terms of the reader's attention. If it's not the whole buy-in of like, this is a realistic attack, what's going on in North Korea, maybe not so much, but as a story and a plot that has your attention, it's knocked out of the park. And so why don't you, Chris, just give us the summary for this book? Because I think this is one I want to see if the Goodreads plot summary lives up to the actual banging plot that we got, or if the summary is a little off.
All right. So just to note, it got a 4.2 Goodreads, 4.4 on Amazon. The exact same scores that Hidden Order got. Would agree that this book is, floating around those scores, but Hidden Order did not deserve those.
This is way better. Yeah.
All right. After a CIA agent mysteriously dies overseas, his top asset surfaces with a startling and terrifying claim. There's just one problem. No one knows if she can be trusted. But when 6 exchange students go missing, 2 airplane passengers trade places, and 1 political asylum seeker is arrested, a deadly chain of events is set in motion. With the United States facing an imminent and devastating attack, America's new president must turn to a covert counterterrorism operative, Scot Harvath, to help carry out 2 of the most dangerous operations in the country's history. Codenamed Gold Dust and Blackbird, they are shrouded in absolute secrecy as either of them, if discovered, will constitute an act of war.
Dude, that's one of the best synopses.
It is. It's interesting how it calls him this synopsis is decides to call him a covert counterterrorism operative, not a CIA operative like the last book.
Right. Some mistakes were made in that book.
We're flopping back and forth. Oh, I love this. I love the summary.
Dude, it hits on everything. And I love how the first line of it is the first chapter. A CIA
Essentially,
agent
yeah.
mysteriously dies overseas. We open up with that Chinese DJ, and she has some intel she passed on to one of our guys, her handler, but then she disappears, and we don't know if we could trust her. And then our guy disappears, the knock, he gets taken out. And so, like, what do we do with this intel as single source intel, in the depths of Hong Kong, being trafficked by, again, this DJ who does these high society kind of parties? What do you make of that? Is it a trap? Is it not? Right from that first chapter, I'm intrigued.
Mm-hmm.
And then second, we cut right to the president, which will be very interesting to hear what you think of President Paul Porter. But we're in his cabinet immediately debriefing the intel, what we're going to do about it. And I feel like I'm really bought into why we have an operation going to North Korea. I think, is that Blackbird? No, that's Gold Dust. Why we're going to send in 4 SEALs, which ends up being 3 SEALs and a CIA interpreter who knows Korean. They're going to go into the DPRK because there's some secret operation that they're covering in nets right out in the middle of the jungle in the countryside. And we don't know what's under these nets. Our surveillance drones can't pick up on it. But thanks to the intel, we know it's related to Snow Dragon, this attack that the Chinese are unleashing. And at the same time, Blackbird is that all of this is linked to a Pakistani, Yaqub, who they tracked to Karachi, who we know has been involved with selecting, I think it was maybe the engineering students, or running a person who's going to then hire and find these engineering students who can be deployed in the U.S. So we've got so much global intrigue going on, from the North Koreans assisting the Chinese, to Chinese spies deep in Hong Kong, to sleeper agents or people already infiltrating domestically in the U.S. I'm so bought into all this. And then boom, the next chapter, we've got a really awesome team up of Scot Harvath, Chase Palmer, and Sloan Ashby coming back from the last book. What a great team up. Chapter 1, 2, and 3 just absolutely sings to open this book.
Yeah, that's what I was saying when I read the first 5 chapters. It just draws you in. It's the perfect setup. Every single piece of it has, that the like teaser ending, the cliffhanger endings of the chapters. Everything's interesting. It's setting up all these 3 different things going on at the same time. I really like going immediately to the president, and after we get that cold opening with, the person we never meet again. And yeah, I mean, I don't know where you want to go with all this. The only it's crazy the amount of stuff that is packed into this novel. We go a lot of places. There are a lot of names. I'm just going to say
a lot of people.
I'm probably going to mix some people up
completely.
But yeah, if I off the bat, if I had to give it maybe could have been simplified with less characters. But
yeah.
I don't know how you tell. It's a very intricately woven story, and every single person it has their piece. Yeah. So, it's hard.
I think you're right. That again, it's been a big criticism of most of Brad's works. Even his good stories, his great ones, seem to have these additional pieces that were one step too far, or maybe weren't needed. And the way we said in Vince Flynn, his writing, I think, should never be abridged. He had this economy of language where every scene, there's 2 people on a dark street sitting in a black SUV, talking about something, was a key component of the plot development. Whatever was going on mattered. Here with Brad Thor, some of it is just world building for world building's sake, or filling in gaps that, sure, will have a payoff. Is it a major payoff anybody really remembered? Maybe not. Or there's a payoff, but it was so long ago. A big one is Medusa. Medusa was supposed to be the contact in the Florida Keys, who was getting the Chinese people to Cuba, where they had a secret base or some spy operation going on. I forget what they called it. They had a nickname for Havana. The Chinese were using that.
Oh, but yeah. I know what you're talking about.
I forget what it was again, it was another one of those little code name details. Oh, the plantation.
They called it the plantation. That's right.
Yeah. They called it the plantation. And this guy Medusa would ferry people there. That was dropped really early on in the book. I think it was the guys in the second division talking about it, like as part of the plan. People in the Politburo and the standing committee.
Yeah, because when they were talking about, they wanted to move up the attack and they were willing to give up some of the diplomats, but they couldn't compromise on these 5 princelings. So
the princelings, yeah, and that's a cool angle. So maybe what we do in a minute here is separate North Korea and China, and maybe take them separately, like start with China and the princelings and Chung being called in and all this. But yeah, we do see that palace intrigue inside of China with the second division. And I think that's really cool. And they reference a lot of having to work with the standing committee, the Politburo Standing Committee, the PSC of the Chinese Communist Party. And a big part of the attack is the dates and planning when to do it. And it's like, if we start pulling out our assets, the Americans will know what's up. They can prevent this thing. They can put up their guard. So we got to pick a time when people will be leaving to go back to China. And most importantly is the Chinese Communist Party officials' kids who are studying in the U.S. And then, they talked about the doubles program.
Yeah, that was cool. There's a lot of little nuggets like that Brad like sprinkles throughout.
And those nuggets are really cool. And as you're reading them, they hit. And I'm loving it. But 20, 30, dare I say 40 chapters later, I don't know if I recall that detail when
it comes time for us to like have to give to talk about it. I'm like,
yeah.
I was just like, wow, I love this novel.
What was that thing?
But I can't remember like some of the stuff from it. I don't know. But
like, how cool was it at the end when Medusa, they actually impersonate with Chase Palmer pretending to be that drunk captain on the boat, taking the pencilings out.
Scott was the drunk captain.
Scott was the drunk captain? Okay, but what was Chase Palmer? He was the guy who came in?
He was the, like his first mate. Yeah.
And all that is like,
and Sloane is the tramp stamp.
She's the woman. Exactly. I'm trying to remember like Medusa and taking people to
It's
Havana.
Interesting because I listened, obviously, to the audiobook. So I picked up on it very quickly because Armand didn't do that good of a job like changing it. They sounded too much like Chase Harvath, and I guess that's what he's doing. He's acting, right?
Yeah.
But you could imagine if you were reading that, then like it hits like completely differently. It's like
it was a cool sleight of hand.
It is cool. It was cool.
What else about China?
All right, we have the main parts about China are one. It's the whole plot point of the novel. This idea of this attack. Chinese want to hit back at us. They've come up with this snow dragon plot. These other tidbits that they mentioned, like, that they started buying up gold because...
and land.
Yeah, because I guess we should mention, like, we don't actually know what the attack is until close to the very end.
Yeah, the EMP thing is kind of shrouded in mystery. Is it biological? Is it a nuke? We don't know.
Well, I guess the reason that we have to shroud the actual attack in mystery is because that sets up for why I think the North Korea bits like hit that much better because we're like and like you said, sometimes when we do these dueling narratives that like rarely touch like physically, most of the time they touch like idea wise or like plot wise.
A piece of intel.
Yeah. But yeah, like we never see these characters interlap, but I was bought in to that. I would have just read a book like that was following those 5, if there was more to that story, I would have enjoyed that.
I could have stayed in North Korea the whole book.
It was so
much fun on the ground there.
It was interesting. So I think that's why we had to keep it a secret. But yeah, like the fact that it's an EMP, that's kind of crazy. And then it kind of reminds me of the past couple books where we've been in either, maybe not with Brad, but we've gone into both like the ISI or we've gone into like the Iranian intelligence. Not that is that's the Pakistani. So Iranian intelligence or Iraqi intelligence. Like we're seeing like these different bits and pieces, specifically with in our other podcast, the No Limits Mid-Trap podcast. So I like it. It's a new aspect that we haven't quite had to deal with. We get a juxtapose that with the American politicians.
Yep.
and we're with the president, we're with a lot of like the cabinet, for the various scenes. We're with the FBI director, we're with the CIA director. I liked how they immediately brought in. Well, he had to like backtrack his like announcement that it was a dual
With
CIA.
Lydia Ryan.
Yeah, like she's now just the deputy director.
But she liked that. I think she has the political pressure, the monkey off her back that McGee can run cover for her. He's one of the old timer guys. And she can do the actual dirty work as deputy director without having to, really be on the hill so much. I thought that was a nice little connection to Hidden Order. Between that, Sloan Ashby, Chase Palmer, I really liked in the end how Hidden Order kind of built this new team or this new fabric of the American intelligence apparatus. And then you drop, Paul Porter as president in there. I feel very confident in this administration right now. And I feel like this president, the reader isn't set up to be a complete, we're not going to be complete fans of. I think he has his qualms, his negative attributes, but I think we're supposed to really like him. Did you get that sense that he was kind of going to just do what he had to do? There was one line Brad wrote where he's like, most presidents campaigned on doing whatever it would take to keep the country safe, but this president actually meant it. Like little lines like that made me kind of like the guy. Or I think Scott or somebody says, what's the president going to do about it? And he says, officially, I think Reed Carlton tells him, officially, he says he's going to do everything he can to stop this attack. The difference is, I think he actually means it. I feel like not all presidents in books, sometimes they're just the cheerleader presidents. Like, I'm going to give you carte blanche, do whatever you want, go right ahead. I feel like this president isn't perfect. I don't even remember how long he's around. Whether he's around for the long term or not, I like him enough. I could like him more depending on what happens. But he doesn't stand out as very memorable just yet in the series. Yeah,
because Scott's had a relationship with, obviously he had a heavy relationship with the first president, where
from Lions of Lucerne.
From Lions of Lucerne,
saved the daughter,
his life.
Yeah.
But then the second president that we've had, he essentially uncovered that caused him to step down, right? And then now this is our third president we're going. I feel like he's going sort of like middle of the road. I'm not going to take a stance on him quite yet, but I want to put him in a positive light kind of deal.
Yeah.
It's interesting how the presidents haven't stood out as much, besides the first one, as much as like they have in like the Mitrab series.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, outside of Lions of Lucerne, I can't remember a book that was president-centric or White House-centric.
Yeah, true. Well, because he gets out of the Secret Service pretty quickly, right? So,
well, that's true. Exactly. Once he leaves the Secret Service, that's the whole idea of Reed Carlton and crew is you're kind of
and the Alpha, like the OIIA is like a
OIIA, with Gary Lawler too.
Gary, yeah. We haven't seen Gary in a hot minute, so.
No, this stretch of books, he definitely takes that back seat. He really does.
Until he comes back.
Yeah. Reed Carlton kind of replaces
him? I guess that's the point, right? Reed, and then once Reed is no longer with us, then, I guess Brad was thinking, all right, I want to have that character back. I have this character in the shelf that I haven't dealt with in a while, so boom, I'm going to bring him back. So.
Yeah. And I remember that is a kind of a struggle for Gary, I think, to fill those shoes or accept the role. And yeah,
all
interesting.
Right, so that's China. Let's dig a little bit more into North Korea. So we got one CIA operative, Billy. We got 3 Navy SEALs. I don't remember their names. One of them was one.
I forget the Fordyce.
Oh, Jimmy Fordyce. He was the
Fordyce
leader,
is
right?
the team leader. Yeah. Strong character. Like, I don't think somebody will ever see again, but like good operator.
No, very good operator.
I think what's equally intriguing about the North Korea stuff is just one, damn, we're sending dudes into North Korea on this sub, and it's just really cool watching them actually move through the landscape. But the two things that completely elevate it are the team dynamics and the conversations they have. because there's a couple of crossroads where Tang, being the non-Navy SEAL, wants to do one thing. Fordyce got to keep the group dynamic together, stay on mission. He's like, we're just going in, taking pictures and leaving. Tang knows the landscape. He's an American of South Korean descent who is able to speak perfect Korean and even mastered, I guess, what you would consider North Korean dialects or regional differences. And I think he said he's infiltrated the DPRK
like
19 times.
Oh, yeah, like some crazy amount of times, yeah.
Yeah, a crazy amount of times. So I'm just like, my mind is blown that we have guys doing that, whether it's true or not. The fact that this Tang did it, and of course, how I'm actually bought into it. Again, this is one of those times an author could completely lose the reader with this is just not possible kind of scenario. But Tang is the dude. He's like coming in with iPads and all these Western goods, and he's not preying on people who are competent or high up enough to want to, screw the pooch. He's finding these people who are just enough desperate, but also just enough eager to want to kind of move up the rungs of society where they'll get the goods from Tang, they'll buy what he's selling, and then they'll flip it to the next dude and flip it to the next dude. And I love this discussion of organized crime, how most countries, organized crime wants to infiltrate the government. But in North Korea, the government wants to infiltrate organized crime. Even the government officials see a need to team up with cartels to get power and influence.
Right.
And I was like, that's a neat dynamic. And what that causes is eventually Tang's goods, which have NSA spyware and everything on them, reach the highest echelons of society. And so the highest officials in North Korea are using devices that they bought on a black market that have our spyware on them. I just thought things like that were fantastic.
Genius.
Fantastic. Tang's network is amazing.
That and the fact that, he showcases his ability to get around and, come stocked with cash, Playboys, cigarettes, Jack Daniels,
whiskey.
This guy is smart, intelligent. And I think I like that you brought up the dynamics, because I found that to be like the most heartening part of the story, that you could see like there was this tension from the beginning that gets slowly resolved over time as these guys realize that, all right, they both can bring something to the table. They both are operators in their own way. They both are legit, dudes. Like Billy Tang, like, has that fucking knife that he uses to slit the one guy's throat who comes like to get his he puts it in the back and then like cuts it out. Yeah. Oh my God, that was an intense scene.
So Brad doesn't go super detailed into the tech specs of weapons, like a Jack Carr, but when he does, it's special. Like he's got a perfectly designed weapon for the job, and he describes it exactly what you need to know. It's not too much, it's not too little.
And then you complicate the whole story with this little boy, and Billy has boys, and it's like the whole idea of like, well, we're gonna shoot him. Like, what are we gonna do with him? And I love the fact that Billy's whole time he said he wasn't gonna bring back the girl, but when he gets back without the girl, Fordyce asks, "Where's the girl?" Like, at that point you could tell he trusted him. They had earned over the time you had seen them grow together, earn this trust, and I don't know. It was just like. It was nice.
At the end of a mission like that, Billy Tang may not be a SEAL, but he's one of the brothers.
Sure.
Yeah. And you get that through their dialogue. Even at one point, one of the other tough guys is like, let's just kill the kid. I'll do it. No problem. And Fordyce is like, you ever shoot a kid? And he like straight up asks him,
right?
Like, you know what it means to shoot a kid cold and then go home? Like those scenes are just like when they're arguing over in the freaking jungle. It's like, who's going to sneak up on them? And they're almost at that crossroads of like, if they don't make a decision and don't have that cohesive group unit together, it's about to go south. Mm-hmm. Like literally a ticking time bomb any second.
Well, and then he brings up the whole lone survivor like experience with the other SEALs.
Exactly. It's all there. And those conversations, I think, elevate the North Korea stuff even cooler than what it is at just face value.
Oh, that, and also when they get stopped and
the checkpoint.
They're about to get out of it, and then they don't. then they eventually get out of it. Like,
and even the guy Tang's asset, who's the driver, knows enough to make noise to kind of signal to them, shit's about to go down.
Right.
You better
so
be ready.
So they're ready.
Truck.
Yeah.
And they're ready. Yeah. And what about the actual plot they uncover? Because here I am thinking they're building a weapon. They're testing a biological disease, whatever. What'd you think about actually building mock-ups of American rural towns? Because the Chinese are afraid that the biggest resistance kind of invading America is going to be in the rural areas. That was
not in the cities.
No, they're worried about like hillbillies.
That and this idea of like learning how to farm and cultivate with very primitive stuff. Like it was like a biprong like effect of like, one, mock towns. How do we deal with bumbles in these rural towns? And then
armed resistors, yeah.
And then two, what can we learn from the North Koreans who by necessity they've had to learn how to do agriculture in these squalid conditions,
fertilizer,
that are essentially we're going to bring upon the world. So we need to learn from that. It was interesting. I think it added to this idea of like, all right, it makes sense.
It does. The thing is, it's not like the highest level of buy-in.
No,
but it's enough to wet your whistle and be like, that's really interesting and thought-provoking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's just that right balance, this book. It's maybe a little too jam-packed, too many names. You got Yakub, who leads you to somebody else, who leads you to Hamjor, who leads you to... Then there's like a Ren Ho, and then they bring in Chung, and then it's like maybe it's jam-packed and unbalanced with that stuff. But again, not enough to lose you. It's like just enough where you're on the edge of the story is complex, but it needs to be complex. If it were simpler, it probably wouldn't be such a big operation like Snow Dragon. Like,
right.
That goes up to the top. It's a massive, complex operation, and our intelligence has to unravel it. And that's going to take like some guys being put out on a bolo to local police, but you don't want to do that because then you might spook the media. We got to tail some guys, and we got to tail the Chinese, kids at the university. Each one of them has to have a tail, but not enough to spook them. We've got to maybe have some tech stuff going on, which is why the troll is eventually.
Yeah, he comes back. Thank God.
We got to look at the storage containers, right? And we need somebody to track all those documents and mess up with the security cameras. And they even track the Xerox machine. One guy did a crappy Xerox, and they're able to locate which machine he did a Xerox on. So we've got some of that tech investigative stuff going on back home too.
We have the whole time, like, Scott is truly, trying to figure out what this plot could be. Like, again, just like us, he doesn't know what it could be. He's been tracking around. He's playing it from the whole, Islamic terrorist angle. He was
interrogating guys.
Yeah, over in Karachi, a pretty gruesome interrogation on a sub, like using liquid, using the water to like fill up like the tank where they're able to like come in. That was intense. And then, that takes them to Dubai where they roll up, this other guy who he was actually the one who facilitated getting the visas, right, for the engineering students. And what he interrogates him, or, his interrogation tactic for him is knowing that he's claustrophobic, putting him in that that case, bringing him to another spot to interrogate him. We're going all over the place. It reminds me of, I wanted to say like this book reminds me of
a Brad book.
Yeah, another Brad book, but I lost it. But anyways,
State of the Union, Germany.
A little bit of State of the Union mixed with like the better parts of Takedown.
Yeah, I could see that. And the same way Takedown almost has one too many players, one too many little plots along the way. This one maybe does too, but it works.
Right. Yeah.
It's like that borderline. It's like that really fine line. Because I completely forgot about the guy in jail, Wazir Ibrahim.
Oh, yeah. Also. And then, so we have the Somali connection.
There's even one point where they ask, like, so the Chinese are doing this with Muslim engineers because they're taking advantage of our visa program to fast track Muslim students to make them feel like they're part of NASA and that they had an important role in space. But we also got these Somalis, and like we're racking our brain as the reader the same way Scott and basically everyone in the
Scott,
White House is basically Reed Carlton doesn't even know what's going on.
The FBI agents, yep.
And I think that's indicative of what the Chinese would actually do. They want to just complicate this thing so much that it's hard to trace blame. But we're getting the leads, and it's thanks to what Scott and crew are doing that we are tracking down all these leads.
And I think ultimately the plot begins to break down, or for Scott, when Chung comes along, because he
Chung's a game changer.
Essentially, him coming to the United States sets in motion a series of actions that then ultimately allows Scott and co to figure everything out, right? Because he's in, he switches in at the airport to go to Nashville with this other guy who happened to be already on the radar with this LAPD.
That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
The bait and switch.
The bait and switch. I had, it makes sense because as soon as you get past, no one's ever asked me for my ID when I've gotten on an airplane.
Right. You just need that boarding ticket, which you could have exchanged with any bozo in the airport.
Yeah. Nothing's stopping
That's crazy. That was shocking. And there was even a quick line of like, yeah, but it made boarding times faster. like the trade-offs of that.
Yeah, they're like, every time we suggest this, the airlines push back. I'm like, well, I think I'd prefer to be a
10-minute delay. Yeah, I think so too. Oh yeah, but what about the old Ben Franklin line? Those who give up a little freedom, give up a bit of freedom for a little bit of safety, deserve neither freedom nor safety. Something
right,
like that. Well, I don't know, man. That one sounded too real and too possible with the switching of the boarding passes.
I guess, like, what's the downfall? You can get on another plane, but like the hope is that you stop the attack before you get on a plane. Like whatever plane you're on doesn't really matter, right?
I think less for an attack, but more for tracking
people. Yeah,
But then we've got cameras and biometrics and everything.
Yeah, nowadays, like as soon as he gets out of that other airport, they're going to pick like this person up again. So
yeah.
Anyways,
yeah, it was thought provoking though. Yeah, but you mentioned Chung. I agree. I think Chung is a game changer. I think the plot really changes. And like you said, it gives us a leg up. It shows there's some, chinks in the armor. And I think the Chinese are worried about that as well. The one dude, I forget if it's Colonel Zhe or whoever, he's like, Chung, really? Like, Xi, yeah. We really need to bring in Chung? Like, we're kind of activating him. It kind of seems like a risky play, and it ends up being a risky play. I couldn't figure out Henry Lee, Ren Fo, and the difference between Chung. Ren Fo is the guy on the farm in Idaho.
Yes.
That was something that just got jumbled up for me. It was almost like that point of the book where it was one too many. But Chung plays such an important role. He made his way into my limerick.
Oh, let's hear it, baby.
Haven't had one of these in a while. I think I skipped Hidden Order, and I'm going to leave it that way. I'm not revisiting Hidden Order anymore.
Oh, come on.
Let's just keep it. Let's keep this train rolling. There once was an assassin named Chung, and now China's snow dragon has sprung. It's all up to Scott to unravel this plot before the EMPs are flung.
That's good, man.